everyone, to another episode of the NYC Godcast, the Jamie Rachel Show.
Still no.
Yeah. So we are again with the Identifying Invisible series. I hope this has been fun for you guys. What an odd yet applicable series.
It's odd, but it's logical.
Yeah.
Like once you grasp it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know,
but
like
it's like
it's also like,
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think of this series? Well, anyways, so there are 5 little words.
Oh no.
That's right. But tell me, what are the 5 little? Don't look at the screen. I want to think of 5 little words for us.
I want Dunkin' Donuts now.
That is
oh,
fun.
well, that was.
What do you have?
I don't know. That was.
Did you not see my
Oh,
fingers?
no. I
like,
don't know. That was.
Did you guys not see that? I was over here going one.
I know. But just off the top of your head, 5 words.
I don't know what was.
That's not a sentence.
I mean, it is. It's not a correct one.
Sad.
But that
Anyways,
brings fear into my heart.
yeah, there are 5 little words that can bring fear into a pastor or youth pastor's heart, maybe faster than anything, or someone who's leading service. If you guys at your church have someone that like stands at that podium while the service is going on, 5 words that can scare somebody to death and make your heart start racing. And does anyone have a guess what those 5 words might be?
You did a scrolly thing, so I know.
What are your guesses? What do you think those 5 little words are?
I don't know. Like, I feel like one of the things is like when someone stands up, I know that what the words are that you're actually going to say, so I don't want to say those ones. No, you scrolled it down.
I didn't think you saw it.
But it's the whole thing of like when they're trying. Have you ever had in service, like in the actual like sermon, someone try to
answer
something,
Yeah.
not just answer,
Reply.
but like go against? Do you guys remember that? I don't know.
No.
We've had that a couple times where someone has stood up and been like, "But what if it's like this?" And it was like it was just weird. But what if it's like this?
What do you think? What are the 5 words that scare you?
I seen it. I'm sorry.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, you guys don't know. So this is it. The phrase "the Lord told me to."
Yes. It's
Terrifying. Terrifying.
instantly everyone's like,
yeah. Like not only the pastor, youth leader, or person leading service, but everyone in the pew.
all the laymen.
Oh no! Like our hearts go. This can be good. This
Or
isn't
we're
gonna be
like, how's he going to handle
good." Oh yeah.
this
Or
one?
we're laughing inside. Haha, sucker.
Like, are we gonna have to hide the children?
I thought you guys had the chili. I'm like, what kind of church are you going to? I want to come. So the Lord told me to. It terrifies us to hear someone say that. Maybe it's not even in church. Maybe someone walks up to you, family member, or at the store or something, and someone holds your hand. They're like, "The Lord told me to." What is your reaction?
Lord told
your
me.
hands are sweaty.
Told me that
That's
you
not
would
good.
give me $100. No.
He told me that.
You don't have the right God.
I'm not talking to Rachel at grocery stores. Anyways, but do we have all been like that's a little intimidating. It's a little scary. Yeah, there's a tenseness there that we're uncomfortable. And so the reason is, for the most part, that we're under the assumption that whoever is saying that, they don't actually know what God wants from them, right?
Yeah.
They don't actually know what they're supposed to do. And the thought of someone being told, someone being bold enough to act upon what they think is God is saying, it's kind of outlandish. We kind of operate on this muted observance of what we think God says. Like, I think he says it, but we'll just wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
And so for someone to be bold about it and say, God told me to and I'm ready to act,
It's really weird.
we get nervous about that. And so the fact is, and this past year since 2020, this has been so in the forefront of my mind. For as Christians, as church people, we are so uncomfortable. We struggle so much with faith.
Yeah.
We really are uncomfortable with faith. We struggle with people who operate under an influence of the invisible. That's today's episode. Operating under, that wasn't the full name, invoking the invisible influence. So I knew there was another I in there somewhere. Almost sold it cheap. So, but we're uncomfortable. If you're going to operate under the invisible, it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
do you think our uncomfortability doesn't come from
uncomfortability? Is that a word? I like it. I like that, but I don't know that's a word.
Uncomfortability comes from, I think it's right.
I think it's uncomfortable.
Oh, it sounded good. Is she like let it?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
flow?
It's like almost a rolling of the R's. I liked that a lot. But
I'm very
someone
fancy,
call Webster for us, or Miriam, whoever he is.
People call them? We're not that old, Josh. Anyway,
You text them.
you text them. It's the cha-cha, don't you know? You don't remember cha-cha?
Slide?
It's like no.
That's what I'm like. All I think is you're trying to text just slide.
No,
to the
there
right.
was a-
slide to the right. I don't.
There was a
understand
company
you
called
hip
Cha-Cha,
kids.
and you texted them questions, and they would answer you back.
Okay.
Anyway,
Did you have a point?
Yes, the uncomfortability.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Say it one more time.
Yeah. So the uncomfortability.
Okay.
So I feel like that we have that uncomfortability from people that used it wrong. I don't think it's necessarily that, like, we're not afraid of faith because of faith's sake. I think we're afraid because of all these other people that have done stupid.
Right.
And
No,
you
I
don't
would
want to be that person.
I would completely agree with that. And what I'm noticing in church and in Christianity is we assume everyone by default is that.
Yeah.
We don't, like, if I meet you and you say that God told you, my default is, they're not really
There's a
supposed
rule and an exception, and that's the rule.
Yeah.
The rule is
but
that
do we see how that's
crazy.
so backwards? Like, literally, we're Christians. We're people of faith, and yet we're uncomfortable with someone. Now, are they out there? Yeah.
Yeah.
But we just assume everyone's not. Because we're uncomfortable with an influence of the invisible.
Yes.
And so the Bible literally, this is a little oversimplification, Cliff Notes version of the big old Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible literally is nothing more than a book of people who are doing what the Lord told them to do.
Wow. You know,
wow. Or not.
Or
Right?
not. The things that they've chosen to do with the things that Lord has told them.
Yeah. So literally that's the Bible. It's a book of people who are operating by faith. They are walking by faith. They're doing really, really strange things for no other reason than God told them to.
Yeah.
Rachel talked about Noah, right? In our last episode or a couple episodes ago. I'm not sure when it was. Still don't. But she was talking about Noah and like, that was strange. Build a boat. Strange.
It's
There's
weird.
strange.
The Flurgenbergs.
It's strange.
The Flurgenbergs.
I'm gonna ask Chacha about Flurgenbergs and uncomfortability. I'm gonna ask Chacha about that. And tractors.
He wasn't there for that. Yeah.
I wasn't. I'll have to go back and watch that episode. But we're like build. What do you? That's rather strange, Noe.
Noe.
That's his name, Noah. Fine. It's rather strange. But what we. But what we find is that what was Noah doing? Noah was operating under the influence of the invisible. He was doing what someone he couldn't see told him to do. And that's odd.
Yeah. He
that's
looked
weird.
dumb.
He looked dumb. And like, imagine that in 2020. Imagine that in a Baptist church. What do you mean God told you to build a boat? That's who told you? God,
taking up an offering for
Kevin's
ark. You know what I mean?
I like that a lot. Kevin's ark. That's great. I'm not gonna get a boat. I'm just gonna say that now. I'm not gonna get a boat. I'm not just that.
He's gonna be wiped out with the rest of everybody.
Rachel's appalled by the thought of not getting a boat.
I can't believe you wouldn't get a boat.
You wouldn't get on Kevin's boat.
Yeah, maybe Johnny's, but not Kevin's. Okay. Anyways, so Hebrews 11 has kind of been somewhat of an underlying chapter for this series. You talked about it some. I don't know that you have, but
I don't think I did. No, I didn't talk about it.
Chapter 11 of Hebrews is the faith chapter, and it's really just a running list. Like literally, you can just go through there, and it's like a Cliff Notes version of the Bible, but it's a running list of Old Testament people who did what God had told them to, who did what an invisible God said to do. Yep. They did what someone who they could not see and no one else could see told them to do.
Yep.
Weird faith. Like that's what it is. And so we read just a quick peruse down through the list. Enoch. We read of Abraham. We read of Noah, also known as Noe. We read of Isaac. We read of Jacob and Joseph, also known as Noseph. We read of all of these guys who do strange and weird things for absolutely no other reason and no purpose at all except that the invisible God said to.
Yeah.
So they did.
Yep.
Weird.
Would we look at that like... I think that's the thing is like the opposite end of what we were talking about in your podcast is would we be that person, but would we be the person that would make fun of them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, would you be the one to be like, why is he building it?
Because we are in church. Like you started talking in the beginning,
yeah.
like someone says God told me to, we're like, no. Like
So are we the person that's supporting it, or are we the person that's like,
and yet
weird?
And yet God is invisible.
Yeah.
The only way for him to talk to us is by him being invisible and saying something. Yeah. And so are we mocking the system or the person? Like that's almost blasphemous. That's almost scary. Like that's a fine line to walk.
Yeah.
We're all guilty. Like if you're in a Baptist church, or whatever church, you're guilty,
Any
right?
church, really.
And so we go down through this list of Hebrews 11. And then we find the account of good old Moses, not Noses, because that would be odd.
Do you have a nickname for Moses?
Mosey.
Yeah,
we're on this.
Mosesiah.
Moses. Too much. So did you just snort? Someone snorted. I felt that.
I found it hilarious.
Oh no. We really need some new hosts on this podcast. So Moses was a man that operated under the influence of the God that he couldn't see. He was a man that operated by faith. This is what Hebrews 11:24-27 says about Moses. By faith, Moses forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, Pharaoh, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Did you ever notice that was in the Bible? Hebrews 11:27. Moses endured seeing him who is invisible.
Yeah.
But he's invisible.
Yeah.
But he could see him.
Seeing
But he's invisible. But he could see him. He operated, he endured, he operated under the influence of the invisible, who we couldn't see. That was Moses. That was Mosey. Mosiah. I also wouldn't get on his boat. So I'd say most of us know the story of Moses, but quickly, Israel, Moses and this. Let's try this again.
We all know the story, but
We all know the story. We all know the story, but for some reason
somebody else tell it.
So we find that what a hot mess. We find that Israel has been forced into brutal slavery under the evil rulers of Egypt for nearly 500 years. I mean, that's a long time. Imagine your whole family and all of your neighbors and everyone you go to school with and everyone you go to church with living as a slave for as long as anyone could remember.
Yeah.
Being whipped and beaten as brutally as possible in intense work every day. And I mean, this took place for 5 generations, right? 500 years, 100, if each generation was 100 years. 5 generations. So think back 5 generations. Do you know your 5th back generation?
I don't have this back. I only got one.
Well, it would be your great 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 grandpa. That would be 5 generations because your dad and your grandpa. So it'd be your great 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 grandpa. I don't know him.
No.
I don't know.
I don't even know my great grandparents.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you know your great 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 grandpa or whoever. But even all the way that far back as anyone could remember, they'd been slaves. Yeah, that's all anyone had ever known. That was just the reality of their lives, living as slaves. And it would be like all of you and all of your family have ever known, and it'd be like your bosses and all their family had ever known, and everyone around you, all that they've ever known. And so it's not like we're talking like 21st century slavery, right? Not that, I mean, there's still slavery out there, but we're not talking about like your employer. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about like you go to work and he's nice and he says, you should probably do this for me and I'll pay you. And you can have a coffee break, you can have a lunch break, you have rights, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about an evil dictator. Yeah. We're talking about an evil, cruel slave owner, a dictator. We're talking about Pharaoh. In fact, at the time, Egypt was the world's biggest superpower. They had the biggest army. They were just this ginormous force that no one could reckon with. And so they had the biggest economy, they had the biggest military, the biggest infrastructure, and Pharaoh was the king of all of it. He was the king of Egypt. He was like the Hitler of their day, right? Yeah. He was like this ginormous force in the world. He was a world ruler. And so here's this guy named Moses. Moses. And he shows up on the scene and he tells all of his family and all of his neighbors and all of the people he knows, I'm going to lead us out of here. Cuckoo. Yeah. Like,
is there a way to lead us out of and honestly, if that's all you know, and you'd be like, is there even life outside of this?
What is out?
Yeah, like what is outside?
Out of where? Yeah. What do you mean? Out back? Like what out where?
I've been outside before.
I can make it from the front door. Thank you, Mosey. And so what do you think Moses' family says back to him? I can just imagine, the Bible doesn't tell us this, but I can just imagine, I'm married. I can just imagine sharing with my wife first what I'm going to do before I go tell the church, before I go tell the world. Cuckoo! That's not going to be a conversation.
That's not going to work.
He's like, no, you're not going to do that while you're married to me. It's not going to go well. People would have literally thought Moses had gone mad. Too much sun in the heat in the desert. He'd gone mad. He's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? Yeah. He's totally lost his bananas. He's got a screw loose. He's a couple crayons short of a box. The guy's nutso, right? Because Pharaoh, ye old Hitler, if you will, is never, ever, 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 ever going to let us out of here. Ever. It's inconceivable. Everything we've ever known, always, forever, has been living here in slavery under him. And besides, as long as anyone can remember, as far back as we can trace our family tree, that's hard to say. Yeah. That's all we've ever been is slaves. We have always been slaves. We will always be slaves. We'll die as slaves, just like everyone before us. Yep. And I can just imagine after ripping Moses a good one, after mocking him and cracking a few wise guy jokes, maybe throwing an egg or a tomato in his direction, right? Someone in justice is just sincerely like, Moses, what in the world gave you this idea anyways? Yeah. Why would you even think of such a crazy thing? To which Moses replies, God told me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Hebrews 11. Moses actually did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just read here 11:27. Moses endured, not looking at the king. Moses endured looking at the influence of the invisible God.
Yeah.
He operated under this influence of what God, who could not be seen, told him to do. Not because he was crazy, not because he had a lot on his mind, but Moses was operating by what could not be seen.
Mm-hmm.
He led Israel out of Egypt, out of bondage, not fearing the wicked king, because Moses invoked the identity of the invisible. He chose to do the impossible because he was looking at the God of the impossible. He chose to do what made no sense because he saw the God who could defy all sense and science. He endured as seeing him who is invisible, Hebrews says. And so Moses operated under this influence of the invisible. He operated by faith.
Yeah.
By faith. So what I want to challenge us with today is this. Are we operating that way? Like, is that the norm for your life?
I'd say no.
It's a unanimous no.
Yeah, unanimous no.
And unanimous.
Yeah, I thought
Words
we
are
were
not
just
our friend.
I thought we were just gonna slide over.
Doing a podcast.
I'm like, wow, he's just gonna keep on going. It's good.
Yep, I noticed. No, we don't operate that way. I don't honestly know many people that operate that way. Does God have a right to influence our life?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Are we letting him? Not like Moses.
Well, it's just like he didn't ask anybody else if he should.
No.
He didn't go to his pastor. You know what I mean? He didn't go to his best friend. He didn't go to, family member and been like, I have this idea. I think I should let everybody out of Egypt. But what do you think about that?
Yeah.
It was, I'm going to go do this because God said so. Well, okay. Like the confidence.
Yeah.
It wasn't a questioning. It wasn't he didn't look to anybody else for that.
Mm-hmm.
He just stayed within him and God. You know what I mean? I think that's just powerful.
So the sad and ironic thing is that if we're not willing to follow God and what song to sing in a service,
Mm-hmm.
if we're never going to give over the little things and say, God showed me to sing this song, God showed me to testify this, how in the world are we ever going to split the Red Sea? How in the world are we ever going to deliver? How in the world are we ever going to see the God of the impossible do the impossible in our lives? Yeah. We don't trust him in the small thing. That's what Jesus said. I trust you with little. I can't trust you with a lot, right? Or it was backwards. I can't trust you with a lot because I can't trust you with little.
Yes.
Those who are faithful in the small things. And so like we're awkward about a person saying the Lord told me to do this itty bitty tiny little thing. Moses literally delivered a nation,
Yeah.
million plus people
Yep.
out of the grips of a dictator that was wicked for as long. I mean, like, do we see the contrast here? And like, there are some people who kind of equate the two, right? The Lord showing me what to sing is the same as Moses. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, but we're so uncomfortable with allowing that influence on our life that just operates, right?
Yep.
Just operates. And so if our faith is so weak that we can't even be led to talk to a stranger about Jesus, then we're never going to have enough faith to let him lead people out of the clutch of a wicked king. Christian church, the question is this: where is our faith? Why are we not operating under the influence of a God who can't be seen? Why is the invisible God not our explanation for how we live? Why is following faith so weird in our day? Why is big, unbelievable unctions strange to us? I met a man a couple weeks ago. It's honestly been a few months ago now, I guess. But really just rocked my world. Really just, I've thought about this guy so many times. Only met him once, one single day. But he really just, I really can't stop thinking about him. He's pretty, I wouldn't say pretty. He's a very, very ordinary guy. He's in his mid 50s, maybe 60s. He's from Kentucky. He's got a very southern Kentucky accent. I believe he's a realtor. I believe so. He's a very ordinary guy. His name's Jeff. And again, I only got to spend a little bit of time with him. But ever since that day, it has really altered my outlook on what faith is. It's really altered my outlook on the limits of trusting a God, an invisible God, to influence my life. So this guy, he sat down and talked with us. Just kind of explained his story and some of his testimony. And this guy talked with God. And I mean, not like, thank you for this food, amen. Like, this guy talked with God. And this guy had God talk to him just as plainly as you guys are talking to me and I'm talking. Like, that literally was the relationship there, almost to a biblical sense. Like, God would speak to him and he would act upon what God had said to him. And so this guy, he would receive instructions, like major instructions from God, like crazy things. And then he would go and do the instructions God had told him. He would operate under an influence of the invisible. And so the ironic thing, the sad thing that he shared with us was that because of his faith, because he was willing to do this, he was actually kicked out of his own church.
Oh, wow.
Blew my mind. And so we were sitting around the table one night, me and a couple of other guys, till really late, like midnight, which if you know me, I'm a very...
That's really late
Yeah,
for
that's
you.
really late. That's like the next day.
I mean, you're not wrong.
But he just kept sharing story after story after story of incredible instances where he allowed the impossible to take place for no other reason except for he trusted and was influenced by the invisible God. And so he shared how God had told him to, this is crazy, God told him, go run a facility and fill it with clothes and goods for the less fortunate. Now, his church, again, did not support him, told him, you're crazy. You don't, God told me to do it. Like they were freaked out by those 5 little words. And so they did not support him, but he did it anyways. He took it upon himself and did it anyways. God moves and arranges all the pieces and does all the work. And would you know that not once, but twice he does this. And he shared that just an outpouring. God met so many needs and drew so many people to God through this ministry. He shared another testimony. This one really just blew my mind. He shared a testimony of how one time, I think this was when he was younger, one time God tapped him on the shoulder and said, I want you to get a backpack and I want you to purchase a plane ticket to Israel. This was God's instructions to this guy. Again, he's alive. This isn't a Moses story, right? This is a Jeff story from Kentucky. And so he says, pack a backpack, nothing else, not a suitcase, not backpacks, a backpack. And I want you to book a plane ticket to Israel. And so Jeff packs a single backpack. He gets on a plane and he flew across the world simply for no other reason except for God told him to. God, who we can't see, influenced his life. And so this guy does this and he has no taxi service arranged. He has no hotel booked, no itinerary imagined, right? This guy operates under the influence of the invisible God. So he shows up in Israel. He's telling us the story with his southern accent. He's cracking himself up as he tells it because he's just like blown away by what God does. Just an amazing guy. So he shows up in Israel and he walks out of the airport. Again, nothing from here. Like this is all God told me to do is book it. Nothing. He walks out of the airport and he starts walking and he's asking God, all right, I did it. Now what? And after a short amount of time, a man literally out of the blue walks up to him and asks him if he was from Kentucky. And Jeff answers, well, yeah. Or however you say, I don't have a Kentucky accent. If you didn't notice that.
I did not. I was flawless.
And so the guy says that God had told him to, this is the guy who walked up to him, God had told me not to take my normal route today, and that I was supposed to come pick up a man by your name and take you to such and such a place. So here are at least 2 individuals on the planet who are operating under the influence of the invisible. They are doing what God told them to do. 5. And so to make a long story short, Jeff is picked up from the airport miraculously. He's given a room to stay in for the week. He's provided with everything he needs this entire trip, all simply because he operated under the influence of faith. He operated by the influence of what can not be seen. And this was the crazy thing. The more you talk to this guy, this wasn't the exception of Jeff's story. Yeah. This was the rule. This was literally life. I mean, he literally told me, he's like, I'm just used to God telling me what to do, and I'm used to him giving me what I ask for. Like, that's always been our relationship, and so I just trust that that's what he's going to do. And he said that with a straight face, and like he actually meant it. And that really convicted me because I'm like, well, that sounds a lot like the Bible. That sounds a lot like a Christian, but I don't live that. I don't know anyone else. You're the first person ever from Kentucky or anywhere who's ever lived that way that I've met. And it was so real to him. And literally, again, story after story after story, he told of in his Kentucky accent of the ways that God had simply done what he had said he would do because Jeff allowed him to influence his life. And so it's really challenged me. I'll never forget his stories, and I pray I never forget them. I tried to write as many down as I could after I went to bed late that night. But growing up in church, we excuse away the need for faith. We live an explainable life that operates under the visible. Yeah. And yet there's no need for faith if you're operating by what can be seen. Yeah. And so this is a big problem because without faith, without the operation of the influence of the invisible, it is not hard, it is not difficult, but it is impossible to please God. And so the question is this: could we be a bunch of Christians called by his name, yet that he's not pleased with? Because it takes faith, it takes the impossible to please him. People that he's not accepting of. Could we be people who he looks down, he frowns upon? I don't think that he honestly cares so much about what we wear per se. I don't think he cares so much about what we eat or where we go per se. God cares about our faith.
Yeah.
The thing that all of us have excused away. The thing all of us have overstepped. The thing all of us have said, it's okay, no one else does that. No one really lives that way.
Yeah.
Without faith, without operating under invisible influence, it is impossible to please God. Those words should scare us.
Yeah.
Are you scared? Do you have a comment? Should I wait quietly? While
No,
I
don't have a comment.
Okay, what about you still? I'm assuming nothing.
I was just thinking I don't remember exactly what you said, but just thinking about like the impossible prayers in my life. Me and CJ just had this conversation yesterday. I told you me and CJ had this impossible thing we've been praying for, and it almost seems like God's moving, but like we don't know for sure what's gonna happen yet. But I feel like we cheapen impossible prayers. Like we come up with a list, Dad's done it many times, list of impossible prayers, and then they get answered, and like we're like, oh well, that was just a coincidence that ended up working out that way. Or, well, yeah, that wasn't that impossible, I guess. You know what I mean? And I feel like we just logic things out when God's doing the impossible, God's moving, God's, we just are like, well, like the people could have been like, oh, I guess, Moses.
I guess the wind could have blew the water.
Yeah, we just take out God from things a lot of the times and cheapen it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the other thing is too, like I think it's good to have a list of impossible prayers, and I think that's challenging. But then not just the genie in the bottle thing, but then also just operating under that, operating under the assumption that God, who you can't see, is going to lead you to the next step and show you what to do and show you how to do it. You know what I mean? Like, because what if just like that? What if he's going to use you to answer your prayer? Well, that means you have to allow him to influence you to get that prayer, right? And so just that operation, that movement, that daily living, that is a God who can't be seen through you.
Right.
Today's considerable quote is from Tozer, and he says, "At the root of the Christian life lies belief in the invisible. The object of the Christian's faith is unseen reality." So I want to share with you guys, I'm really excited about this. I want to share with you guys a rather different featured content. Instead of a song like we usually do, I wanted to share a scene with you guys from The Chosen, which I don't know, you guys have not seen The Chosen. If you've not seen The Chosen, I highly recommend you go and watch it. It's free, but it's very well done and really just thought-provoking. I really encourage you to watch The Chosen. But in this scene, we find it's actually a humorous flashback. It's actually not a part of the storyline of The Chosen, but it's a flashback to the days of Jacob. And in this scene, Jacob is trying to he had just got his land and he's trying to find water, right? Jacob's well. And so what we find is that there's this humorous interaction where Jacob is trying to explain the God he serves is invisible, and this guy he's talking to is like, okay, I've heard of all the visible gods. What do you mean yours is invisible? Like, it's rather funny. And I just thought it fits so well with what we're talking about today and what we've talked about in this series. And so I encourage you to go listen to it, go watch it. It's really well done. It's funny, but it's also very powerful. Like, it very much pricked my heart when I watched it. So go check it out. And then lastly today, I'd like to wrap up. We're going to try to challenge you all. We're hoping as the podcast continues on, we'll have, feature content, have considerable quotes, but we also would like to leave you a challenge. I thought I named it. I did. I'd like to leave you with today's charge up challenge. Does that work? Do we accept that? Okay, we will allow it. So I'll leave you up today's.
I like that you come up with it and you're like, we will allow it.
Yes, we will allow it. But you guys could name your own then. That'll be mine. You could name your own challenge.
No, I like yours.
Okay, I thought so.
We will accept it.
Okay, just had to twist their arms a little bit. So today's charge up challenge, the very first, is to actually go read the entire 11th chapter of Hebrews. It's not a very long chapter, but it is a jam-packed chapter of people, normal, ordinary people, right? Farmers, nomads, pilgrims, people who just ordinary, plain Jane people who became known famously for doing nothing more than being influenced by the invisible God. So go read Hebrews chapter 11. And what I'd like you to do is keep a tally of the number of people listed there who operated under the influence of the invisible. That's your challenge for today. Well, friends, thanks so much for joining us for the NYC podcast. Thanks so much for joining us for this series, Identifying the Invisible. Until next time, what we should have you to do is just make us disappear. In identifying the invisible.
You didn't enjoy it. We did it, and you didn't enjoy it.
You're excited about yourself. I didn't do it.
You did it?
I don't think
I heard you. I heard you. I knew I wasn't making.
Do it together. Do you remember on Sesame Street those this is getting awkward. I'm showing my age now. Sesame Street's still around.
No, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, it's a big bird. Well, anyways, like the puppets, they were like stringy.
Yeah.
And they would go up in the spaceship and they would go woo, and then they would disappear. Do you see that mental image? All right, let's do that. Ready? Identifying the invisible.
Okay.
Oh wait, are we gonna do the noise too?
That's what I was.
Okay,
going
we gotta
for.
do the noise too.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Identifying the invisible.
Ooh.
Okay, that was very awkward, embarrassing. I hope he doesn't put this in the podcast.
Well,
Friends,
if it makes anybody feel better, I have no idea what they're talking about, so I just joined in for the fun of it.
friends, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, see ya.
Bye.